In this third video in our series on how to confidently choose the right articles every time for your nouns, we are going to look at how to think about article choice for gerunds and verbal nouns, and how, if at all, this differs from the standard 5-step approach for nouns used in general that I gave you in part 1. If you haven't yet seen part 1 and part 2, you will find links in the description below. Okay, before we start looking at what articles to use with gerunds and verbal nouns, we need to do a quick review of what they are, and therefore why we might need to use an article with them in the first place. Present participles, gerunds, and many verbal nouns are all formed by taking the base verb and adding the ing suffix. They all look exactly the same, which can be a bit confusing. To make it easier for you, it might be helpful to put these three terms on a continuum scale of transformation for these verb plus ing words. On the one end, we have verbs being verbs. These are participles. At the other end, we have verbs being nouns. These are verbal nouns. And in the middle, there are verbs that have become noun-like, but still have some of their original verbal qualities. These are gerunds. There is a lot of confusing and not very helpful debate about what the difference is between gerunds and verbal nouns, so to try and keep it simple and practical for you, we'll use these following ways of defining these terms. A present participle is used when the verb is just being itself as a verb. I am painting the wall. Participles can also be used as adjectives to describe something. Her painting skills are really impressive. A verbal noun is a fully functional noun derived from a verb. While you will come across verbal nouns that are not formed from the base verb plus ing, for example, construction or education or arrival, for now we are only looking at verbal nouns that look the same as participles and gerunds, which tend to be countable things like a building, 2 paintings, many meetings. And although they started life as verbs, these verbal nouns don't keep any of the original verb's qualities. A painting is a thing, not an action, and in grammar it cannot have an object. But it can be described by an adjective. She hung the beautiful painting on the wall. Try to think of verbal nouns as just the same as any other countable noun when it comes to how it behaves in a sentence and what determiners and articles it can take. A gerund, however, is a verb that functions as a noun in a sentence. But while gerunds perform the job of a noun, they still keep some verb-like qualities. They are still talking about an action or state of being. They are not physical things like verbal nouns can be, and they can take an object. For example, painting the wall would improve the room no end. And they can be described by adverbs or adjectives depending on the context. Painting the room beautifully would improve the room no end. The beautiful painting of the room would improve it no end. So, when coming across a verb ending in ing, we need to follow these logical steps to decide what it is and if an article is something we need to worry about. The first step is to decide if the ing ending verb is either a participle or a verbal noun or a gerund. Participles, when they are used as verbs, will have an auxiliary verb. We are meeting today, or we have been meeting since last year. Participles used as adjectives will come in front of another noun or form a compound noun. The running water was so refreshing. A small dining table sat in the middle of the large meeting room. A verbal noun can be countable and can be described by an adjective. We are having 3 important meetings today. The boring meeting dragged on for hours. Gerunds are talking about an action rather than a thing, and they are treated as uncountable and can be described by adverbs. Meeting regularly was the key to finishing the project successfully on time. When it comes to thinking about whether we need to use articles with these verb plus ing words, we can forget about participles. Like all other verbs and adjectives, they don't take any kind of determiner. Step number 2 is, once we have identified a verbal noun or gerund, is to see if there is another determiner in front of it. In the same way as regular nouns, when a verbal noun or a gerund already has another determiner in front of it, we can forget about articles altogether. Some new paintings can be seen in the gallery. Here, the quantifier determiner some and the adjective new tell us we are dealing with a plural countable verbal noun and no article is required. Or, her dancing impressed the judges. Here, the gerund dancing has the possessive adjective determiner her in front of it, so again, no article is required. When a verbal noun or a gerund does not have another determiner in front, step number 3 is to look at the context and decide if they are either defined or undefined. Are they being used in general or are they specific? In the context, are they as yet unknown or are they known to us already? So if we say, running is good exercise, or we plan to build a new building for our back office operations, in both cases, the gerund running and the verbal noun building are undefined and are being used in general. But if we say, the dancing of the children at the event was outstanding, the gerund dancing is now defined and made specific because it was the dancing of the specific children at this specific event, not just any dancing in general. Or, the painting on the wall caught everyone's attention. But here, the verbal noun painting is defined and specific by the context because it is the one on the wall that caught everyone's attention. Our next step is to decide if our gerunds or verbal nouns are countable or uncountable. In general, an ing verbal noun will be countable and might be used in its singular or plural form, and a gerund will be uncountable. Which leads us to our 5th and final step, which is to assign our articles. This is done in the same way as with regular nouns used in general. Singular verbal nouns, when undefined, take an a or an. Plural verbal nouns and gerunds, when undefined, take a 0 article, and both singular and plural verbal nouns and gerunds, when defined or specific, take the definite article the. Let's have a look at a couple more examples of how this all works in practice. I am feeling really happy today. Here, the verb to feel is working as a verb using its present participle form with the auxiliary verb am to create the present continuous tense. And as a verb, no article is required because verbs don't take articles. Or, we share the same feelings about this issue. Here, feelings is a verbal noun. We know this because it is a thing that works as the object of the verb share, and it is being used in its plural form and It is being modified by the adjective same. It is defined because these are the specific feelings we both share, and as a plural countable noun, the choice of the definite article the works well. Feeling really happy with whatever happens is one of life's big challenges. Here, feeling is a gerund. It is a verb behaving like a noun and is the subject of the verb is. It is the thing that is one of life's big challenges. It is being modified by the adverb really and the adjective happy, which again tells us it is a gerund, not a verbal noun. It is undefined because we are talking about this state in general, and as a gerund is uncountable, and therefore it takes an invisible zero article. Let's look at another example of how these distinctions might work with the verb to write. If we say, we were writing to each other every week, we are using the verb write as a verb in its participle form with the auxiliary verb were to form the past continuous tense. And being a verb, no articles are needed. Or, the Creative Writing Club meets once a week. Writing is now a participle used as an adjective, along with the adjective creative to describe the noun club. And because neither verbs nor adjectives take articles, we can forget about them altogether. However, if we say, after their last defeat, the writing is on the wall for the team's manager. In this idiomatic expression, writing is a verbal noun. It forms the subject of the verb is. It is defined because it is the specific writing on the specific wall predicting this specific team manager's future. It is countable and singular, and therefore takes a definite article the. Or, writing her journal regularly became a valuable part of her weekly routine. Here, writing is a gerund. We know this because it forms the subject of the verb became and it is modified by the adverb regularly. It is undefined because it is talking about this activity in general, not a specific instance of it, and as an uncountable gerund, it therefore takes a zero article. That's it. Try not to get confused if you come across disagreements about what verbal nouns and gerunds are. If you keep identification and analysis of the verb plus ing word simple and follow these 5 easy steps, you will be able to successfully develop practical skills to master this very commonly used aspect of our language. If you want to practice your articles choice skills further, you can also find lots of useful exercises in our Master Article Choice Challenge playlist. These quick exercises are designed for those of you working on developing more advanced language skills up to B2 and C1 levels, and are especially useful if you are preparing for an exam like IELTS or Cambridge B2 First or C1 Advanced. I hope this all helps. In our next video, we are going to explore how adjectives and adjectival phrases can impact the specificity of your nouns and how this might impact your choice of articles for them. See you there. Bye.